Ankles awake on the dance floor. Shoulders loose, eyes alive, feet whispering across canvas. Usyk, undisputed heavyweight, had come down the mountain to sharpen a welterweight turned junior middleweight turned dreamer, chasing the biggest man in the smaller rooms. His presence wasn't about thunder. It was about the invisible, the small things fans miss and great fighters obsess over. The deliberate rhythm of laps in a pool, the balance that grows out of a half-beat pivot, the way a hand floats out to touch distance and then disappears back into a guard as if it were never there. Crawford soaked it up. He always has. Switch hitting isn't a trick when you live in both houses. It's a language. Usyk understood that. So did everyone who has sat long enough with Bud to realize his gifts aren't loud until they're lethal. He's different. Usyk shrugged to a camera, that soft smile disguising an iron verdict. Right and left. Smart. Feels distance. In one breath, he called the Canelo fight crazy. In the next, he called Crawford the best fighter alive. Sometimes truth is contradiction carried by a calm voice. Around them, the sport argued. Size matters, they said. Of course it does. Canelo Alvarez is granite and timing baked into a frame that's learned to carry 168 like a crown. He's tasted the punch of Gennady Golovkin 36 rounds over and never blinked. He stood up to light heavyweights, knocked out Sergey Kovalev, and only bowed to Dmitry Bivol's geometry. He is the business of boxing made flesh. The bank, the draw, the constant. The trainer who's been with him since boyhood swears a knockout is inevitable, round unspecified, confidence absolute. The promoter, who rarely picks against him, still leaves a door open, because the game respects craft, and Crawford is craft distilled. But craft alone doesn't move bones. That's the refrain. Weight classes exist for a reason. Hamza Shiraz says it out loud. The way sparring partners remind you where the walls are. The jump is real, the physics unforgiving. He watched Crawford wrestle with Israil Madrimov's physicality at 154 and drew a line. If Madrimov presses you back, what will the redhead do when he realizes you can't dent him? Joel Diaz painted the picture in harsher colors. Bud will make it clever and make it cagey. And the moment Canelo feels fire without fear of flame, he'll walk forward and keep walking. Some call it tactical inevitability. Others call it the moment bruisers become bullies. And yet there's a reason the conversation won't settle. Crawford's resume doesn't rely on a single mountain. It's a staircase he ran, panting only when no one was watching. Undisputed at 140, the masterpiece against Errol Spence at 147, where genius met violence and genius refused to yield. Another belt at 154, the moment he asked for it. He's 38 in September. And maybe that's where the skeptics find their oxygen one fight a year, the body mileage tab due. But whenever he's asked to explain why any of that should scare him, Crawford's eyes don't harden, they soften. Anything is possible. My fight, that's not bravado. That's a craftsman's promise. The case for Bud isn't smoke. It's structure. Southpaw or orthodox, he'll alter the questions until your best answers arrive a half-second late. He doesn't have to stop Canelo. He has to stop Canelo from being Canelo, from setting his feet with a full count and letting combinations bloom. That means denying him stillness, poisoning his rhythms, touching him when he reaches and turning when he plants. It means scoring without being scored on, knowing when to throw to win the exchange and when to throw to win the eye. It means having the nerve to hear the crowd boo control and keep controlling, because winning isn't a public vote. It's arithmetic with a mean streak. Can he do that for 12 without getting caught? That's the open wound of the matchup. William Skull turned a fight with Canelo into a long gray hallway and made it to the other end upright. Canelo threw little one anyway and called it boring. Crawford won't try to copy a blueprint that dull. He'll try to color it in, add counters where Skull gave feints, angles where Skull gave space. But every extra brushstroke is a risk. To paint, you plant. To plant, you offer leather to a man who punishes offers. None of this is theoretical inside the room. Usyk's camp is a laboratory where the variables are cruelly honest. Swim to learn economy. Dance to learn transfer. Shadow boxed with intent until your shadows betray bad habits. Usyk's strength Kokyako B keeps the drills strange on purpose, because novelty makes the nervous system listen. Crawford doesn't shrug off the weird work, he welcomes it. You don't go hunting a man like Canelo with platitudes. You go hunting him with calibration. Even the men predicting his doom can't stop praising him. Diaz calls him one of his favorites, pound for pound, king of the era. Before returning to the refrain Canelo's chin, Canelo's walk down, Canelo's menace once he decides your power is theater. Fury weighs in with a heavy man's logic. At 168, the big man. At 140, the little one. Eddie Hearn needles Bud about star names on a record he believes is thin because the era never gave him the super fights in time. Then he tips the cap. After Skull, after the murmurs, after the quiet, it wouldn't surprise him at all if Crawford won. That's how a sport sounds when it senses the chess is more complicated than the posters. Meanwhile, Crawford smiles at the questions meant to corner him. The talk about weight, about history, about whether a chin can scale with ambition. He says he's been sparring bigger men since forever. His gym has always been uphill. He says he's been the underdog his entire life, and if that feels like branding to some, it feels like bone-deep memory to him. He talks about Canelo with respect, and not the kind you say through a smirk. One bad performance doesn't define a fighter. We'll see the best version. Good. He wants the best version. And then there's the quiet verdict from the man who already climbed both mountains. Usyk watched through the same eyes that solved Joshua twice and outfoxed Fury across 24 hard rounds. He calls Crawford #1 pound for pound, then shrugs away the crown for himself, as if it were too shiny to wear every day. He once said Bud would beat Canelo because intelligence can make size feel clumsy. Now he calls it 50-50. That's not a hedge. It's a hymn to uncertainty, the kind of uncertainty that sells out a stadium because both roads are believable if you strip the noise to the studs. The fight is this. Can the smaller genius make the bigger monarch think more than he punches? Can he keep the exchanges his size requires and avoid the ones Canelo's size demands? Can he own the space between them long enough to turn a legend's patience into a liability? And if he can't, if the moment arrives when attrition becomes avalanche, does he have enough sting to slow the fall? In the shadow of those questions, Crawford keeps doing the quiet work. He swims. He dances. He switches in sparring until the room forgets which hand is the trap. He listens to a heavyweight talk about lightness. He lets the world argue about physics while he pursues geometry. And somewhere in Las Vegas, a man who has built an empire from violence hears all of it and smiles. A different Canelo, Eddie Reynoso promises. Maybe that means volume. Maybe that means venom. Maybe it means the old redhead's shoulder roll finds a new beat and the counters arrive like thunderheads. The beautiful truth is that the fight remains undecided on purpose. That's why it feels big. Because in an era that loves foregone conclusions, this one won't stay still. One side says wait, the other says wisdom. Somewhere between those words is a bell, and two men with enough pride to wager a legacy on which word wins. Your turn. Does size settle this, or does skill bend the scales? Can Crawford turn distance into destiny, or will Canelo turn patience into punishment? Drop your pick in the comments.